Hey, what's up, BFA? I wanted to create another video here, and this one's going to pertain mostly to referencing within your paper that you're writing, your thesis. So I'm sure most of you are already done with the paper, but I just wanted to kind of help you out a little bit here in case. I want us to be all on the same page, and I wanted to try to help you a little bit. So what I'm going to talk about really quickly is I'm going to talk about references. I'm going to talk about using quotes of 40 characters or more, and then talk about the bibliography. Okay. So as you go along here, as I said before, it'd be a really good idea, I think, for you to have sections. The sections help the reader know kind of where they are in the paper, and then it's going to help you, I think, keep the paper a little bit more structured. So I've just got this thing here. It says conceptual intentions. I don't know. I was thinking about what you might be writing, and then here's my artist statement. And basically what I did was I just pulled this out of my artist statement, just as an example of something that you might be writing. So I've got this thing in here, and when you add a quote or a reference to this paper, you're going to need to make sure that you let the reader know, right? You're kind of signaling to the reader that these aren't your words, right? Now I actually I kind of collect quotes, or I collect things that people have said, because especially if I'm writing for a more scholarly, if I'm doing a more scholarly writing, it is a good idea to have outside resources. It just gives your paper a little more authority, right? If it's just your words and you're like, oh, art is awesome, then that's one thing that people read. But if you say like art is awesome, and I'm not the only person that thinks that, right? Like this person thinks that art is awesome, and here's what they have to say about how awesome art is, right? And so when you read that in the paper, you'll find it just gives your paper a little more credibility. Anyway, this program that I use is called EndNotes, and EndNotes is a place where I can keep quotes and references, right? So and I have a bunch of different categories here. Normally what happens is when I read an article or I read a book or a website or whatever, I kind of, especially when I bump into something that I'm really interested in or I think pertains to my ideas in some ways, I grab onto that stuff, right? And I hold on to that stuff, and then I document where I found it and where it comes from, so that if I ever want to talk about it later, I can say, hey, in this book, on this page, this person says this thing, right? And again, it's just about helping back up my arguments or the things that I'm talking about. Okay, so here's this piece of writing I have for my artist statement. It says like blah, 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 blah. This is the stuff I like, and this is what I think is interesting. And what I might do, especially if I were you, because as you probably remember, I said you need to have at least 3 outside sources in your thesis, right? So your thesis is 3 to 5 pages. You're going to have 3 sources from outside of your paper. Now, those can come in the form of paraphrases. Paraphrases meaning you just kind of use the author's words, but you put it into your own words, or direct quotes where you use the exact thing that author said. Either way you do that, even if you just put someone else's words into your own words, a paraphrase, you need to make sure that you let the viewer, or excuse me, the reader, know that actually that's not your idea. Now, I apologize if this is just a total, you guys already know all this stuff, right? I don't mean to tell you things you already know, but I do want to make sure that we're all on the same page, and maybe just by telling you this, you'll find something that you didn't know before. In any case, let's say that you have your references, okay? And you have the people's names, and then you have everything you need. So let's just grab one here. I would like to get one maybe where the title's a little shorter. Okay, so let's take this one. So the way I keep these, again, as I keep the author's name, I keep the year that the work was published, I keep the title, the editor, the place it was published, blah, blah, blah. And then I keep the quote that I think was really interesting, or I thought in some ways had something to do with something I was thinking about. But anyway, here's this quote that this person has written, and it was on page 21 of this book, Thinking Through Art. Okay, so let's take this. So let's say I want to use this whole thing. Let's say this quote really helps me understand what I was trying to say here, right? What you need to do is you need to let the reader know that this is this person's words, right? So this person's name is let's see, Nicholas Davy, right? So what I would probably do here is I would say like, okay, so let's see, so let's start here. Instead, my artistic enthusiasm rises from curiosity and an interest to explore both conceptual notions and technical processes. And then something I would possibly do here is I would say like, similarly, Nicholas Davies, how did we spell that name? Nicholas. And again, you're probably not going to have something like this, but going forward, especially if you think you might go to grad school or you might go somewhere where academic papers are often used, this might be a program that you start to hold on to, because the more writing that you have and the more references that you have, the easier things will be for you. So anyway, so similarly, Nicholas Davy states, and that's usually the bridge I use to get into someone's quote, right? You could say Nicholas Davy writes, the art theoretician Nicholas Davy, or the writer Nicholas Davy. You want to introduce this person to the reader so that it makes sense, right? If I just put a quote in there, if I just put the quote in, the reader might not really understand why I'm using it. You could say something as clear as like, to back up my argument here, in the words of Nicholas Davy, da 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 da. Okay, so here's the quote right here. Through no artwork or art theory. Anyway, let's not even worry about what it says, except that some of the words are spelled wrong. You're going to put this in. Now, if it is a quote, so let's say this was the quote. Let's say it was this. Let's say it's here. This would go in, and when I do this, when you say like Nicholas Davy states, you go Nicholas Davy states, comma, right? And then the next word is actually capitalized, right? So you're going Nicholas Davy states, comma, and then you start their quote. And the way that you kind of show the reader that it's a quote is you use quotation marks at the beginning and then at the end also. Okay, so you're going to say that. And then the other thing that happens, and this is a way for people to check your bibliography or to see, if somebody were really interested in this quote, for them to find that quote, they would then go to your bibliography. But you're going to then say to the reader, okay, this is, I'm going to use the last name. So you can see I used a parenthesis, last name. And then the way I've used Harvard in the past. Harvard is a referencing kind of a referencing standard, I guess. It just is a way so that if you write a paper and you do it in style, Harvard style of referencing, it's just an outline of like how everything's going to work. It's just a way to so that if you're writing in Harvard style, you know exactly how to do everything. So they've kind of created rules. Okay, if your reference comes from this place, if your reference comes from this place, this is what you do. But anyway, the way that normally happens is you're going to do the last name of the author and then the page number that your quote came from, right? And so I said this quote came from 21, page 21, right? And then in the bibliography, when I create my bibliography, I'm going to say, okay, and now here's the thing about our thesis. It is a good idea to use a certain style, right? And so you'll probably see in the files section, I said we were using MLA, right? So MLA is a reference style. And MLA means it's just I don't know what it means, what it stands for, but it is it's a list of rules to help you write a paper. Right, and so people know if they come across a paper, they'll say like, oh, this paper is in MLA style, then they know what the references are going to be like, they know what the bibliography is going to be like. It's not that important, except that it creates cohesiveness, right? It just creates an ease of understanding how things are done. In our papers, I'm not that worried about it as long as you are consistent, right? So when you do your bibliography, as long as you're consistent and you provide the correct amount of information, I don't really care how you do it. Going forward, that's probably going to change if you're in a different situation, but in this situation, I'm not that worried about it. Okay, so let me just make sure there's no crazy emails here. Okay, that looks fine. Okay, so let's do the bibliography really quickly. So we put the quote in, we put the page number in, we have the author, we've got the quotation mark. So our quote there is good. When you put your quote in, you might want to jump directly down and do the bibliography, or you could wait till later, right? The bibliography, again, is important because it shows the reader, or it gives the reader a place to go to then find the source that you got this quote from. So if I thought, wow, this is such an interesting quote, where did this come from? I can then look in the bibliography, find the book name and the page, and then go to that source and read the book. Right? So we're saying Davy here. The way this can happen, and you'll find again in MLA, let's go to the MLA tips. Okay, that's thesis hints. That's also in the files. Here it is here. I just downloaded this from our file section. If you look, here's the document. If you look in this section, it'll tell you. So it's showing you like, okay, if you get it from, these are for images. So use the following format for images. I'm going to create another video for the images. So let's not worry about that. Let's worry about this. Okay, so it says author, title, title of container, right? So that's meaning like, sometimes people will have articles in a book, right? They didn't write the book, they just have an article in the book. So that's probably what that is relating to. I would say keep this as easy as you possibly can. So the way it's going to work is you're going to go, okay, this author's name is Davy. So we'll go Davy, comma, Nicholas, first name. You don't have to put the whole first name, no big deal. Period. You could put the whole first name, it's up to you. Again, as long as you're consistent, I'm cool with that. So as long as your next author is the same, it doesn't matter. And then we're going to say the title of the book is Art and Theoria. Now he has, I'm going to capitalize all that even though it's not capitalized there. And then let's go back to this, the MLA tips or hints. So we've got author, title, other contributors, not necessary, version, I don't think that's necessary, number. And I say it's not necessary because I think this came directly from, oh, okay, so it came directly from a book, but it is, as I just said, it's a writing within a book. Okay, so we've got the title of the article here, and then the title of the book here. Right, so I would do Art and Theoria, and then let's see how they say to do that. It says period, right, so period, then title of container, so Art and Theoria, period, and then, and I mean, people take this very seriously, right? If you're in an English class, as you probably know, they do not mess around with this stuff. They want it to be a very, very specific way. I'm not that concerned about it. I want you to just be consistent, okay? Just make sure that if you put a quote in the paper, I can find where that quote is, all right? So you're going to do author. So we're just going to say title. Let's just get rid of this. We'll just pretend that it had a single title. And then we're going other contributors, version, number, publisher. Okay. So the publisher is going to be Routledge Press. So we're going to go Routledge. So that's going to go in. Okay. And then probably what's next? Publisher, publication date. Okay. And that was 2006. I think that's going to be, let's see, it says publisher, comma, publication date, and then it is comma again. So now we're going to want to make this all the same font, of course. And then we've got publication date, location, and that means pages. So where was it? We're going to say page 21. Now probably here we can do 21. Other contributors, version, number, publication date, location, date of access. So date of access would be like if you got it from a website. I'm not sure why this is publication date again, but I think this is how we're going to keep it, okay? So then I would put a period. So there you go. So there is your, let's make this all the same font. There is the first mark in your bibliography. Now sometimes these are going to be longer, right? You've probably seen them. You can see over here, you know, they tend to get a little bit longer sometimes, but we're going to try to keep ours really simple. We just want to have the basic information. I don't mind how you do this. I'm going to say that one more time, as long as you're consistent. Okay, so let's go back up to the paper. So here was our quote. Okay, we've got the quotation marks, we've got the last name, we've got the page number. I think we're all set on that. Now the one thing that can happen is you might use a quote that's kind of long, right? So sometimes you might see in a book a quote can be a little bit long, and if you have a quote that is longer than 40 characters, you need to do something special with that. So let's see how many characters this is. When I want to check, usually I think if you just highlight this, it actually tells you down here how many words it is right there. If you see that, 68. If you can't, if it's not there, one place you can look is you should be able to look at like tools, word count. It says word 68, and that's because I have this highlighted, right? If I don't have that highlighted and I go to word count, it's going to be 158, and that's the number in total. Okay, so if you need to know how many characters or words a specific section is, just go ahead and highlight it. Go up to tools. Go to word count. Boom, 68. If your quote is more than 40, it needs to be indented. Okay, and the way you do that is it's actually going to get its own line here. So the way that's going to happen is you're going to actually push return. Okay, you're going to go return. It gets a space. You're then going to indent that, and you need to indent the whole thing. So just copy that and then take this little slider here and slide that over. Now the interesting thing about this is it needs to get indented on both sides. Okay, so go ahead and highlight it again. Let's come over to this other side. I mean, this doesn't matter so much as long as you are consistent. Okay, so as long as they all go to the same place, if you want to go all the way in an inch, you can do that. If you want to go half an inch, if you want to go 7, whatever you want, you can do. But now, and let's go ahead and just make this all the same font so it looks a little more interesting. Okay, so now, and let's make that, I want to indent that a little further. It's not quite far enough, I don't think. This should really look like a different thing, right? Okay, cool. Now you've probably seen this sometimes. Let me change that a little bit. As I said, if you get into really specific types of paper writing, you know, they're going to tell you exactly how this should be. For our paper, I just want you to make sure that it's consistent, okay, and that it looks kind of nice. Now, let's say when you write this thing, I actually want your paper to be double spaced. Okay, so double spaced. But when you do this, when you have an indented quote, it's actually going to be single spaced. All right, so anytime you have an indented quote, it gets indented on both sides and it's single spaced. And let's go ahead and just take that space out of there. I don't think that was necessary. So now it's still saying the same thing, right? It says Nicholas Davies states, but now you can see that it's indented on both sides. The other thing, when you do this, when you have an indented quote, you don't need to worry about putting quotation marks. This already signifies to the reader that this is a quotation, and you've already said here Nicholas Davies states, and then we've got this, right? Now you still will want to have the page number. So we said what? It's page 21. Okay, now we don't need to put the last name again like we did before because we've already got the name here, and we know that it's a quote because it's indented. If you want to put the last name, guess what? Have at it. Okay, again, however you reference these things, so I'm using Davy, 21, you're just going to make sure that your other references do the same thing. Okay, and then you're just going to get back on your merry way and write some more of your paper. Okay, so that is how a quote of more than 40 characters will look, or 40 words. I don't know why I'm worried about this. Specifically, maybe. Okay, perfect. Okay, so now the problem here is, look at this. And Word is a little tricky sometimes, and it does take a little bit of playing with. But if you look, I'm still on my same line here, so I need to go ahead and get this arrow back out to the normal spot. Okay. All right, so now we're looking pretty good. Now, let's say I have another quote. Okay, so let's go back in here and let's look at a different one. Joanna Drucker in this book, Affecting Effectivity and Entropy. In this, let's find a short one. She says, let's take this. How, in fact, can any act or art making compete in a manner that is sufficiently interesting to be distinct, I'm guessing it was supposed to say, from non-art products? How, in fact, can any art making compete in a manner that is sufficiently interesting to be distinct from non-art products? So how do you, I'm just going to try to think about what she's saying here. I think she's trying to say, like, how can any act or art making compete? So how can art compete with, let's say, everyday objects, right? So let's say that's what I think she's saying here. How can art compete with everyday objects? You know, why is she saying that? I don't know. I can't remember what the context of this book was, but let's pretend we remember, and let's say that that's what she's saying. What you would do here in your paper, and what you could do, is you could actually just say, you know, blah 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 blah. Here's all the stuff that I'm saying, and then you're gonna, in the next sentence, you're gonna say, like, how, I wonder, can art objects compete in any, we won't say anything else, we'll just say compete with everyday objects, right? So I did write that. Those are my words, but I borrowed that idea from Joanna Drucker. So what you're going to need to do in that spot, if you paraphrase, if you borrow someone's idea, you still are going to need to make sure that the reader knows that you aren't the one that said that. All right, and I'm going to do that by going Drucker. I'm going to write the page that that's from, 594. And that's going to inform, I don't have quotation marks there, right? You can see there's no quotation marks, but that's going to inform the reader when they get to that sentence. Oh, how, I wonder, can art objects compete with everyday objects? Question mark. Now, this is tricky, and you'll probably want to figure out your own way for doing this, but I would probably put the question mark at the end of your sentence and then put a period at the end of this. You know, the other option we would have is to, like, not put a question mark, but then finish with the question mark here, which is terrible because it doesn't give the, you know, the viewer has to, like, or excuse me, the reader has to read the sentence and then go past the reference to the question mark. So let's put the question mark here, period here. Now, again, does that comply with any of the rules, the Harvard or the MLA? I don't know. But I'm going to do it because I think this paper is a little bit looser, and as long as I'm consistent, you know that I'm not going to be mad about that, right? Okay, so perfect. So there's our paraphrase, right? So that's our second reference outside of this, from an outside source. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to need to create a bibliography spot for Drucker. All right, and so what I'm going to do, I'm going to roll down to my bibliography. Now, your bibliography is actually going to start with its own page, right? The bibliography is totally on its own page. Okay, so then what we're going to do here is we're going to create a new spot on here, and it's going to be for Drucker. Now remember, as long as you follow what you did the first time, it's all good. So we didn't put the first name, we just did the first initial. So there you go. So Drucker J. Let's jump up here and see what book this came from. We're going to say it came from, again, if I were doing this legit, I would put the whole title, but we're just going to say it's from this book, Affectivity and Entropy. Okay, so period, affectivity and entropy. Oftentimes, when you have the title, I think sometimes the style is going to ask that the title is in italics, and sometimes it'll be underlined. We'll say for our bibliography, it's going to be italics. You can do underline or italics, whatever you want. Okay, period, and then we need, you could go here and see what we need. On our first one, what did we do next? We did, I think we forgot to do where rootledge is, and I think it's, sorry, you need the place also. So you need the place of the publisher. So it's, and I forgot to put that. And so if you look here, it says title of container, other contributors, version, publisher, publication date, location. Oh wow, publication date, then location. Okay, let's get rid of this period. New York. Is it comma? Let's take a look. Publication date, location, period. Where was page number? Location. Oh, location in the container. Wow, so crazy. Okay, so it's going to go 21, period, New York. Now you can do this however you want. If you want to do it like, okay, I think it would make more sense, in my opinion. It would make more sense if it was publisher, publisher's location, New York, year, page number. That seems to make more sense to me. You do want to have a space between these two. Okay, so let's go back to our book up here. Now this is also an article from a book, but we're going to pretend that it's not. So we need next the publisher. So we've got Berg. I'm going to get rid of that italics. So we're going Berg, comma. Berg looks like it's in New York also. Period. Date 2004. Comma. And what page was that on? It was on, what did we say, 594. Okay, so 594, period. Okay, so that's the second source in our bibliography. All right, now again, bibliography is going to be on its own page. So there we go. So we've got, this is our conceptual intentions section, right? Here's the text, I'm writing this, la 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 la. I've got my first reference or my first quote. It's more than 40 characters, so it needs to be indented on both sides. I've made sure to put the page number so that if someone were interested, they could come to my bibliography, find the book I was talking about, and know exactly which page to go to. What if you used, if you see here, if the page number, if you used a single book, so if you used the whole book, you probably wouldn't even have page number on here. Page number probably refers more to using an article. So like I said, like this Joanna Drucker article comes from a book, and what you would probably do in that case is you would probably say like, oh, Joanna's article is from page 594 to 602 or whatever, right? I think that's more so how they use the page numbers in bibliography, because we've already told what page our reference is, right? So we've already got the page here. So as long as they have the book and the place to find that thing, we've already told them like, hey, it's on page 21 if you want to find that. All right, so go ahead and look in this book and go to page 21. So if you don't want to put the page numbers down here, you don't have to. I think the reason the page numbers down here could get tricky is if you were using more than one source from the same book. So you can imagine if you had a quote from page 21 and then a quote from page 27, how the heck would you put that down here? So if it's from a book and not from a section of a book, then I would say you don't need to have the page numbers down here because you already have them up here. Okay, so there we go. So that's how you're going to go about putting in your references. So if you paraphrase, you need to reference it. If you're using a direct quote, it also needs to be referenced, okay? And then lastly, and just really quickly, you are going to have multiple pages, right? So you're going to have a cover page. You might have an abstract page. You might then get into the body of your paper. You're going to have a bibliography. Again, the bibliography is going to have its own, it's going to start on its own page. And then you might want to put in page numbers. All right, and page numbers are insert. This is a super old version of Word, but I'm sure your version will have page numbers. So you can see here, all you do is just go to page number. Let's do page number. It says show number on first page. Some people don't like having the page number on their cover page. You know, so here it says show number on first page. If you want to have a page number on your first page, you can. This just gives you the option to like format all of the different possibilities with the page numbers. So you could start at page 1, but you're not, I checked show number on first page. I unchecked that, so I know the cover letter is not going to have a page number. So let's go ahead and push OK. Here's our cover page, no page number. And then here's our second page with a page number. So page numbers are pretty easy to put in. And then if you don't want to have a page number on your last page, you would have to you'd have to play around with this stuff. Yeah, I mean, I think Word automates a lot of things and makes a lot of things easy, but then sometimes it can make things a little bit tricky also. Okay, I hope that helps in some way. Please let me know if you have any questions. You know, I haven't seen any questions coming up, which makes me a little bit nervous. I wish you guys were asking more questions, but I'm going to trust that you're all kicking butt and that you don't need me, and that's fantastic. I hope you are doing well and staying safe and all that. So please take care, and I'll see you later.